Lights, camera, action. Take 1 of 800. All right, today we are making my epic bake. Epic. Can't even say the title. Today we are making my epic baked meatballs, which they truly live up to their name. They are epic indeed, and they are Whole30 compliant. This is a recipe that I kind of riffed off one of my mom's recipes. She used to make these baked meatballs with ricotta cheese in them, and when I was doing a Whole30, this was my rendition of it, and I kind of think it's better. I'm sorry, Mom. But they are truly delicious, truly epic, and I can't wait for you to make them in your kitchen because they are a total crowd pleaser. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this kind of ricotta cheese mimic situation that makes the meatballs fall apart tender. Okay, so the first thing that I'm doing is I'm gonna add a cup of basil into here with a little bit of garlic, and we're just gonna get this finely chopped to start. So I'm just gonna put this on, let it blend for about 20 seconds. Okay, so once your basil is finely chopped, we're gonna take a half a cup of cashews. These are unsalted and unroasted cashews. Whoop. Unsalted and unroasted cashews. And this we are gonna put in the food processor as well and blend until I'll show you what the texture looks like once we blend. So again, another 20 to 30 seconds to get that really finely chopped. All right, so once you're done blending the cashews, you can see here you've got this kind of like dough-like consistency, and this is what's gonna make the meatballs oh so tender. And this was kind of my replica of a ricotta cheese consistency, but it also kind of gives it a pesto-y flavor in the center of the meatballs too. So it's a double whammy for sure. So we're gonna add this to a giant mixing bowl. And then we're gonna get some lemon for a little brightness, just the zest of it, and zest about half of the lemon. Okay, so now that we have this in the bowl, we're gonna start building our meatballs with all of the things to make them truly epic. So one of the things that makes these so delicious is adding a little bit of bacon to the meatballs. So we are going to mince it up. Just 2 strips of bacon. You're gonna just dice it as small as you possibly can. And when this cooks off, that delicious bacon fat is gonna cook down in the meatballs and make them even more tender and more flavorful. Okay, so we've got the 2 strips of bacon in there. And now for the other meats, we have 1 pound of ground pork, 1 pound of ground beef. If you don't eat pork, you can omit the bacon and you can omit the pork and just double the beef. You can also add lamb if you prefer. That'll make them really flavorful and tender. They're pretty versatile here. You can use what you have if you don't want to do ground pork, but it does make them really juicy. Now we have 2 eggs whisked. And for our seasonings, we're gonna do half a teaspoon black pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. This is optional, but I like to add some chili flakes to my meatballs, but if you're serving them for kids, I omit this and then I just add it on top of my plate. And then some oregano as well. Half a teaspoon of dried oregano. Okay, now we're gonna take our hands, one of the best tools in the kitchen, and just mix these. You can try to do it with a fork, but Godspeed to you. And if you're one of those viewers that gets squeamish, maybe this isn't the video for you. I always try to hide raw meat sometimes in my Instagram stories because people freak out, but I mean, at the end of the day, this is part of cooking, right? So you want to get it really well mixed because we've got the pork, we've got the meat, and we want to make sure it's evenly mixed up. All right, my hands are clean now because I forgot one ingredient, which is the binder to my meatballs, which is 2 tablespoons of arrowroot. You could use tapioca as well. This, again, is pretty versatile, but I like to use arrowroot because it doesn't have that gritty texture, kind of like almond flour does. So again, going back in, mixing this up until it's well combined. Gotta put that binder in or else your meatballs are just gonna be too tender and fall apart. This will help hold them together as they bake. Okay, so now we're gonna bake off our meatballs. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the bottom of a large baking dish. And then we're gonna take a cookie scoop, or in my house, a meatball scoop, and we're gonna roll these meatballs into about 2-inch rounds. They're pretty large and in charge, and put those in the baking dish and just keep going until it's all lined up. And this is one of those recipes that if like you have a friend that needs a home cooked meal, just had a baby, or for whatever reason you want to drop off dinner to somebody, this is a great one to drop off. What I like to do is kind of the first part, which you're gonna see. I bake them at a high temperature, I let them cook off, and then I add the sauce and drop the temperature down and cook them in the sauce until they get super tender. So you could bake them the first part of the baking, bake that, and then cover it up and tell them what to do from there so that that way they have hot, delicious, fresh out of the oven meatballs. So we've got our meatballs made, and like I said, they're gonna go into the oven at a high temperature at 425 for about 20 minutes so they get browned and get that beautiful crust on the top, and then we'll lower the temperature and add the marinara. So 425, 20 minutes. All right. The meatballs have browned on the top, as you can see. We're gonna lower our heat to 325. And we are gonna pour over a bottle of store-bought marinara. A lot of people might snarl their nose at me, but this stuff is good. And the meatballs are so delicious, it doesn't matter what you put on top of them. So whatever your favorite marinara is, mine is Rayo's. We're gonna pour that over the top of the meatballs. And if you're finding, depending on what ground beef you use, if there's too much fat in the bottom after you brown the meatballs, you can drain that off, but mine is not looking super greasy. So I'm not gonna worry about that today, but just keep that in mind depending on what kind of ground beef you use. Okay, so this is going back in the oven, and now we're gonna kind of cook these low and slow moving forward at the lower temperature until they are fall apart tender and ready to serve. All right, our meatballs are hot and bubbly and looking good. Now, you can serve as is, or you can get fancy and garnish them, which I'm obviously a fan of. Why not? And you can add a little bit of freshly chopped parsley or basil, or like some pretty basil leaves kind of arranged over it. And a lot of people say, what do you serve this with? Because it's Whole30, and the whole point of Whole30 is not eating grains. We do serve these over pasta all the time. I love like brown rice pasta from Jovial Foods. I also love, if I'm really trying to stick to a Whole30 paleo dinner, I'll do spaghetti squash. You can pretty much serve these with anything. Some roasted veggies, some roasted asparagus would be nice. But really, whatever your heart's desire, these meatballs are just perfect in every way. Now, let's taste one. It just never gets old. They're perfect. They're epic. Just to say epic one more time before we close out. And again, such a good dinner to take to a friend or to serve when you're hosting people over. I should probably swallow this meatball. So I hope you enjoy them in your kitchen too. That's a wrap.